He hit the mat with a thud that echoed through the dojo. Gasps filled the room. The sparring match was over in less than 30 seconds. Tiana Brooks, a quiet, unassuming black woman in a faded yellow belt, had just dismantled Iron Crest's top instructor with nothing but grace, precision, and years of discipline honed far from anyone's spotlight. For a moment, no one spoke. Then came the question that changed everything. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Tiana looked up, calm and unwavering. "I used to train NATO's rapid response teams," she said softly. "But I didn't come here to fight. I came here to remember. This isn't just a story about martial arts. It's about what happens when prejudice is met with patience, when quiet strength speaks louder than arrogance, and when one woman's dignity becomes the spark for a community's awakening. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told you don't belong, this story is for you. Please like this video, comment if it moved you, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the strength in silence. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss our next story of courage, truth, and redemption. Now, let's begin. Tiana Brooks stepped off the bus and took a slow, deep breath. The cool morning air of Briarwood Falls, the kind of quiet suburban town where everyone knew your name, felt like a world away from the chaos she had left behind. At 36, Tiana carried herself with a calm presence that came from years of discipline. Tall, composed, and deeply private, she didn't speak much about her past. But if you looked closely, you could see it in her eyes. This was a woman who had seen things most people couldn't imagine. As a former Army officer and close-quarters combat instructor for elite military units, Tiana had taught warriors how to survive when survival seemed impossible. But now she was just another new face looking for peace. She rented a modest two-bedroom house on a quiet cul-de-sac and kept mostly to herself. But something inside her, something long buried, still burned. One afternoon, while walking through downtown, she noticed a sign in the window of a local martial arts studio. Iron Crest Martial Arts. Discipline, power, legacy. The name stirred something familiar, almost challenging. Rumors in town painted the dojo as exclusive, even arrogant, especially toward newcomers who didn't fit their mold. But Tiana didn't scare easily. She hadn't come to prove anything to anyone. She came to reconnect with the discipline that once anchored her. Without fanfare, she stepped through the doors of Iron Crest, unaware that her quiet return to martial arts would soon shake the very foundation of that proud institution. The chime above the door gave a cheerful ring as Tiana stepped inside Iron Crest Martial Arts. The room was larger than she expected. Polished wood floors, rows of heavy bags, a wide matted training area, and banners along the back wall bearing calligraphy meant to evoke honor and discipline. But beneath the dojo's tidy appearance, something colder lingered. Tiana felt it almost immediately. She wore a simple, well-worn gi and a faded yellow belt tied neatly around her waist. It was the same uniform she had trained in years ago. Back when martial arts was more than exercise, it was breath, rhythm, control. To anyone unfamiliar, she looked like a cautious beginner, and that was exactly what she wanted. From across the mat, a voice cut through the air. "Well, well," the man said, his tone sharp with amusement. "We don't usually take walk-ins during close training." Tiana looked toward the sound and saw him. Chase Darnell, standing with his arms crossed, exuding the kind of confidence that wasn't earned. It was projected. He was in his late 30s, built like a fighter, with close-cropped blonde hair and a knowing smirk that seemed permanently carved into his face. "I was told you accept new students," Tiana said calmly, her voice steady. Chase's eyes dropped to the yellow belt. "We do," he replied. "But we prefer students who are serious, not folks showing up in a belt they found on eBay." A few younger students nearby snorted. Before Tiana could respond, another voice chimed in from behind Chase. Natalie Young, his assistant instructor, stepped forward, sharp-featured, dressed immaculately in her black gilet, her own belt lined with golden embroidery. She gave Tiana a quick up-and-down glance and offered a smirk. "Maybe you're looking for the women's self-defense class next door," Natalie asked. "We've had a few moms come in lately trying to burn off some energy. That might be more your speed." Tiana held her gaze. "I'm exactly where I meant to be," Chase chuckled under his breath. "All right, well, suit yourself. Just don't say we didn't warn you." She could hear whispers from the students, the unmistakable sound of quiet judgment rippling across the room. One boy, barely 20, murmured, "She looks like she teaches Sunday school, not sidekicks." None of it was new. Tiana had faced worse than skepticism, but there was something more insidious here. It wasn't just that she was a woman walking into a male-dominated dojo. It was that she was a black woman wearing an old belt, stepping into a space that had already decided what she was and what she wasn't. It wasn't shouted. It didn't have to be. The smirks, the dismissive glances, the way Chase's tone shifted when he looked at her skin, it was enough. The prejudice here wore a polite mask, but it was still sharp as broken glass beneath the surface. Natalie leaned in to Chase, not quite whispering. Did she even bow in properly? Laughter bubbled up from a few students near the wall. No one offered a seat. No one welcomed her. No one asked her name. Tiana said nothing. She simply stepped further inside, bowed once, low and deliberate, to the center of the mat, and took her place quietly at the edge. Chase watched her with arms crossed, like a man waiting for a punchline. She didn't give him one, not yet. Because Tiana Brooks didn't come to impress anyone. She came to remember who she used to be. And if they kept pushing, they were going to find out. Chase studied Tiana for a long moment, his head tilted slightly like he was trying to solve a riddle that didn't quite make sense. Then, with a shrug and the same condescending tone he'd used since she walked through the door, he asked, "So, you said you've trained before?" Tiana nodded once. "Yes." Chase smirked. "Let me guess. One of those cardio kickboxing studios over in the Bronx? Lot of loud music, lots of sweat, not a whole lot of discipline." A few chuckles echoed from the group of younger students lounging by the edge of the mat, their smirks matching his. Tiana's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened just slightly, enough to chill the space between them. She didn't flinch, didn't react. She'd heard that tone before. Years of navigating military systems and male-dominated institutions had trained her to spot it. Not the blatant racism, but the wrapped-in politeness kind. The kind that looked like curiosity but reeked of assumption. The kind that lumped your zip code, your skin, and your experience into one convenient little box labeled less than. Before she could answer, Natalie added brightly, "I've heard there are a few community dojos out that way, more inclusive, for people from underrepresented backgrounds. I think they even use foam weapons to keep it friendly." This time, the laughter came louder. Not everyone laughed, but no one stopped it. Tiana turned her head slightly toward Natalie, offering a smile that never touched her eyes. "Inclusive," she echoed softly, her voice like velvet covering a blade. "How generous." Chase took a step closer, arms still folded across his chest. "Don't take it the wrong way," he said, too casually. "We've just worked hard to keep our standards high here. We train serious martial artists, not hobbyists." "I see," Tiana replied. Chase gave her a tight smile, mistaking her calm for concession. "You probably know a few things, sure, but traditional systems take years, lineage, structure. Hard to catch up when you're coming from, wherever." Tiana looked around the room, not at the trophies, not at the fancy calligraphy, but at the people, the students watching her with curiosity, or worse, pity. The ones who had already decided that she didn't belong here because no one who looked like her ever had. "You're right," she said quietly. "It does take years." The way she said it, flat even, completely void of ego, should have given them pause, but it didn't. Chase was already moving on. "I mean, no offense," he continued, "but there's a reason we don't see too many women from your background making it past yellow belt. Statistically speaking, it's just not the demographic that sticks around." Natalie nodded, tapping her nails against her arm. "Retention's a challenge," she said. "Cultural priorities, you know. Some people don't grow up valuing structure the same way. It was like watching people build a cage around you, piece by piece, while smiling the whole time." Tiana inhaled slowly through her nose. There it was, the quiet, crushing implication that blackness meant softness, that femininity meant weakness, that her presence here was some kind of charitable exception, not a rightful return. She'd faced down combat zones and political bureaucracies. She'd trained soldiers in the art of restraint and the science of violence. She'd broken bones and brokered peace with equal precision. And now she stood in front of two instructors who couldn't see past her skin or her silence. But she didn't argue, she didn't lecture, she didn't even raise her voice. Instead, she smiled again, gentler this time, almost amused. "You have very strong opinions for someone who hasn't seen me move." That made Chase's brow twitch just a little. Natalie crossed her arms, clearly unsettled by the calm confidence in Tiana's tone. "You're welcome to observe for today," she said. "Or if you're feeling ambitious, we can let you try a warm-up drill or two." Chase jumped in, grinning. "Sure. We can set up a round robin with some of our newer students, let you get a feel for our pace." The message was clear. "We'll humor you, but don't get comfortable." Tiana looked from one to the other, then back at the students watching from the edges of the room. Some looked curious, a few looked nervous. One or two looked uncomfortable, as if they could feel the tension in the air but didn't have the words or the courage to name it. She gave a slow nod. "All right," she said simply. "I'd appreciate that." Chase clapped his hands once, mock enthusiastic. "Great. Let's give her a little taste of Iron Crest." As he turned to walk toward the center mat, Natalie whispered, just loud enough, "This should be interesting." And for the first time since entering the dojo, Tiana allowed herself a real smile. Because they thought they were putting on a show for her. But they had no idea they were the ones being tested. She didn't need their approval. She just needed a mat. And gravity would do the rest. Chase motioned to one of the instructors standing near the back wall. "Hey, Caleb," he called out. "Come over here a sec." The man who stepped forward was built like a linebacker, easily over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and forearms like tree trunks. He was younger than Chase, probably in his late 20s, and he wore a black belt with 2 red stripes that looked recently earned. His expression was neutral, but he didn't hide the slight curiosity in his eyes as he looked at Tiana. Chase clapped him on the shoulder. "We've got a guest," he said, gesturing toward Tiana with a salesman's grin. "She wants to feel out the place. Think you could give her a warm welcome?" Caleb glanced at Chase, then back at Tiana. "You sure?" Chase gave a theatrical shrug. "Just a light demo. 2 minutes. Let her stretch her legs." The word demo hung in the air like bait. Tiana turned toward them, her face calm, unreadable. "Of course," Chase added, turning back to her. "If you'd rather just watch today, that's fine too. No pressure. We know this can be a little intimidating for folks without experience." He didn't wink, but he didn't need to. Tiana tilted her head ever so slightly. "I appreciate the invitation," she said. Her voice remained level, soft even, but there was a steady weight in every syllable. "I'm willing to try. 2 minutes sounds fair." Chase grinned wider. "Perfect. And don't worry, we'll go easy on you." She nodded. "That won't be necessary." A few murmurs rippled through the room. Students started rising from the edges of the mat, forming a loose half-circle around the training area. Phones appeared, discreet but present. Natalie moved closer to Chase, her arms folded tightly, her brow slightly furrowed. Tiana stepped onto the mat slowly, deliberately. She bowed at the edge, then at her opponent. No wasted motion, no flair. Caleb bowed in return, more respectfully than Chase had, then settled into a ready stance. Tiana didn't raise her hands yet. Instead, she looked toward Chase. "Before we begin," she said, "I just want to be clear. This is not a competition." Chase chuckled. "Of course not, just a little fun. I won't attack first," she added, "but I will defend myself." There was something in the way she said it that made the room quieter, not threatening, not proud, just certain. "Noted," Chase replied, still smiling, but there was a flicker of discomfort now, like something sharp had entered the atmosphere. Caleb nodded once. "Ready when you are." Tiana eased into a relaxed stance. Not stiff, not traditional, but grounded, like she was listening to the mat beneath her feet. Natalie leaned toward Chase. "She's not even guarding her face," Chase whispered back. "She'll find out quick." He raised his hand. "Begin." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Caleb shifted first, testing the space with a feint, a quick jab toward her shoulder, nothing serious. Tiana didn't move. She simply watched. Another feint, closer this time. Still, she didn't flinch, just adjusted her weight slightly. Caleb went for a low sweep. Tiana stepped back once, precise, fluid, and reset before his foot hit the mat. "She's just reacting," someone whispered from the crowd. Chase smirked. "That's all she knows how to do." But he was wrong. Tiana wasn't reacting. She was studying. Timing, distance, rhythm, breath. Caleb moved again, this time with a light 1-2 combo aimed toward her chest. Tiana pivoted. Not fast, but perfectly timed, letting the strikes pass her by with inches to spare. She didn't counter, didn't boast, just circled, quiet as a shadow. 30 seconds in. Caleb started breathing heavier, not from exertion, but from confusion. He came in faster now, throwing a looping hook aimed at her shoulder. It would have knocked most people off balance. Tiana ducked, stepped forward inside his space, and tapped her fingers lightly on his hip, just enough to show she could have taken him down if she wanted. Caleb froze. The room gasped. Chase's jaw clenched. Tiana stepped back, resetting calm as ever. 1 minute, Natalie called, her voice slightly strained. Tiana met Caleb's eyes. "You're strong," she said softly. Caleb nodded. "You're fast," she said nothing. And still hadn't thrown a single punch. Not yet. Caleb moved again, this time more deliberately. The easygoing pace was gone. His pride, clearly stung, pushed him to engage with more intensity. He came in with a front kick, followed by a quick jab combo, testing Tiana's defenses. She didn't retreat. Instead, she pivoted on her left heel, angling just out of range. The kick sailed past her hip. The jab caught only air. Caleb's momentum pulled him forward, and in that instant, everything changed. Tiana's left hand shot up, caught his wrist mid-motion and twisted, not with brute strength, but with an efficiency that screamed of military precision. Before Caleb could process what was happening, her right foot swept behind his lead leg, her hips rotated, and boom! Caleb hit the mat with a sharp thud. It wasn't loud, but it was final. The air in the dojo changed. No one moved, no one even breathed. Tiana stepped back, giving him space to recover. She didn't gloat, didn't pose. Her stance remained grounded, composed, like she'd done nothing unusual. Caleb blinked up at the ceiling, stunned. "Time?" she asked, not looking away from her opponent. 1 minute 20, someone called out hoarsely from the corner. She extended a hand. Caleb hesitated, then took it. She helped him to his feet with a calm grip, then bowed politely as if this were any ordinary drill. But it wasn't. Because in less than 90 seconds, Tiana Brooks had turned the dojo's hand-picked challenge into an open display of just how badly they'd misjudged her. Natalie's voice broke the silence. What the hell just happened? She wasn't being sarcastic. Her voice cracked at the edges, equal parts disbelief and unease. Across the room, Chase's face paled. He tried to speak, but stalled for a beat, swallowing the lump in his throat. Then, forcing a chuckle, he said, he probably wasn't warmed up properly. But the excuse sounded thin even to his own ears. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, still processing. He looked at Tiana again, not with contempt, but with genuine respect. That was... he began, then shook his head. Where did you learn that? Tiana met his eyes and said softly, a few places. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Because everyone in the room, every student who had smirked when she walked in wearing that faded yellow belt, now knew that this woman had been holding back, studying them, measuring them, choosing the exact moment to let her training speak for her. And when she did, it was like watching poetry written in motion, precise, efficient, undeniable. A girl standing in the back, a green belt, no older than 20, whispered, "She didn't even hit him hard." "She didn't need to," someone else replied. That was the thing about true mastery. It didn't shout, it didn't explode. It simply arrived and changed the room. Chase folded his arms tightly across his chest, his jaw clenching as he searched for a way to reassert control. But in that moment, Iron Crest wasn't his dojo anymore. It belonged to the woman he'd tried to humiliate. And she hadn't even broken a sweat. Chase's pride was unraveling by the second. His face twitched as he tried to piece together what had just unfolded, how his carefully orchestrated attempt to humiliate a stranger had turned into a moment that left him exposed in front of his own students. He took a step forward, arms still crossed, voice brittle. "All right," he said, trying to recover some sense of control. "Where exactly did you learn that? What school teaches that kind of technique?" Tiana turned to face him fully, her expression as calm as ever. She didn't rush, she didn't boast, she just answered. "I've trained in multiple disciplines over the past 20 years, she said, "but most of what you saw today came from my time instructing close-quarters defense for NATO's rapid response teams." The room went still again. Chase blinked. "NATO," he repeated like the word didn't make sense in his mouth. Tiana nodded once. 3 tours, 6 countries. I spent the last decade teaching soldiers how to end a fight quickly, without needing to throw the first punch. Her voice was even, gentle almost, but it carried weight, like truth laid flat on the table. "I didn't come here to prove anything," she continued. "I didn't wear my old rank or my black belt, because respect shouldn't come from what you wear. It should come from how you carry yourself." She glanced around the room. Her eyes moved from face to face, pausing briefly on the students who had laughed earlier, who now stood still, uncertain. "I came here hoping to train quietly," she said. "Maybe even reconnect with something I'd lost. But what I walked into," she looked back at Chase, "was a place more concerned with appearances than character." A hush followed her words. Then, softly, from the back of the room, a voice cracked. It was Maya, a 9-year-old green belt, tall, with wide, expressive eyes and a quiet presence that had gone unnoticed until now. Tears had begun to stream down her face. "They told me," Maya's voice shook, "they told me I didn't have the body type for real martial arts, that I was too soft, that I'd never be fast enough or strong enough, but you..." She pointed at Tiana, her lip trembling. "You just did everything they said I never could. And you didn't even raise your voice." Tiana's gaze softened. She walked toward Maya slowly, then placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't need anyone's permission to be strong," she said. "And you don't need anyone's approval to keep going." Maya broke into quiet sobs. And for the first time since Tiana entered Iron Crest, the dojo was filled not with mockery or silence, but with respect. Real, earned, and long overdue. The silence that followed Maya's words was unlike anything the dojo had ever known. Not heavy, not awkward, reverent. Tiana stepped back, giving Maya the space to breathe, to collect herself. But the moment had cracked something open, something deeper than bruised egos or awkward embarrassment. It was like a dam had burst, and out came voices that had been silent for far too long. A quiet cough came from the left corner of the room. Mr. Simmons, one of the oldest members of Iron Crest, slowly stepped forward. At 67 he moved with care, but he stood tall. His gray hair was pulled back into a tidy ponytail, and a brown belt was tied around his waist. Not spotless, but earned. He cleared his throat. "I wasn't going to say anything," he began, his voice gravelly but steady. "But I think maybe I should have spoken up a long time ago." Chase shifted uncomfortably, arms folded tighter across his chest. Mr. Simmons looked directly at him. "Last year, when I asked about moving into the advanced class, you told me I was too old to do anything beyond light stretching. You said I'd be a liability, that I should stick to Vunvai and water breaks, remember?" Several heads turned sharply. Natalie's face twitched, but she said nothing. Mr. Simmons continued, "I believed you. I sat out of sparring drills for months because I thought I wasn't good enough, that maybe I didn't belong." He turned to Tiana. "But what I just saw, what you showed us today, it reminded me why I came here in the first place. To learn, not to impress anyone, just to get better." A wave of murmurs moved through the crowd. Then another voice came forward. Elena, a Latina mother of two who had trained at Iron Crest for almost a year. "I was told I should lose weight before joining the adult class, that my endurance wouldn't hold up. I was told women can't handle real contact drills," added Yasmin, a petite Afghan woman in her 40s, "so they kept pairing me with teenagers." "And I got dropped from testing rotation," said Devin, a black teenager with a blue belt, "because Chase said my attitude wasn't a good fit. The dojo was no longer a dojo. It had become a courtroom. A reckoning." Chase's lips parted, searching for a defense. "Let's not get carried away here." "No," Mr. Simmons interrupted. "We're not getting carried away. We're finally telling the truth." Natalie stepped in, her tone clipped. "Every dojo has standards. We've always held ours high." "You've used standards to cover for bias," Maya snapped, wiping tears from her cheeks. "That's not discipline, that's gatekeeping." All eyes turned back to Tiana. Mr. Simmons spoke again, voice firm. "You belong here more than anyone I've seen in this place. You didn't just show us skill, you showed us respect, something that's been missing around here." He turned to the rest of the group. "I don't know about the rest of you, but I'd rather learn from someone like her than keep pretending this place represents anything close to martial arts." A chorus of agreement followed, nods, soft yes murmurs, and then, "Will you stay?" Maya asked, her voice soft but full of hope. "Will you teach us?" Tiana's eyes flicked between them, young and old, beginners and veterans, people who had once felt invisible but were now rising. She didn't answer right away. But something had shifted, and Iron Crest would never be the same again. Tiana stood still for a moment, watching the faces around her. They were no longer just students. They were witnesses, not to a fight, but to a shift, a redefinition of what martial arts could be and what it should never become. She turned toward Chase and Natalie, who now stood silent at the edge of the mat, their authority dissolved not by force, but by truth. No raised voice, no drama, just reality, unfolding with clarity they couldn't deny. Tiana exhaled softly, then looked back at the class, at Maya's tear-streaked face, at Mr. Simmons standing tall with new resolve, at the sea of students who'd once looked past her, now looking up to her. She spoke, her voice steady and low, but it carried to every corner of the dojo. Martial arts was never meant to divide us. It was meant to connect us, across cultures, across generations, across every line someone ever drew to make another person feel small. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in. You don't need to prove anything to people who don't know how to respect you, she continued. And you don't need a black belt to embody what this path is about. What you need is a heart that refuses to carry prejudice, a mind willing to stay open, and the courage to show up as yourself. She bowed one final time, not to Chase, not to Natalie, but to the students who had found their voices because she'd dared to use hers. Then, without fanfare, she picked up her worn duffel bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked out the front door of Crest Martial Arts. Her footsteps quiet, but her presence unforgettable. The next morning, just after sunrise, a cool breeze swept through the open fields of Briarwood Park. The air smelled of dew and grass and something else, hope. Nearly 40 people gathered in a loose circle beneath the tall oak trees. Some wore uniforms, others wore hoodies, sweatpants, whatever they had. There were teenagers and retirees, mothers and veterans, first-timers and old practitioners who'd lost their way. They weren't there for titles. They were there for truth. At exactly 7 o'clock a.m., Tiana arrived. No belt, no GI, just simple workout clothes and a calm presence that needed no introduction. She carried no clipboard, no formalities, just a folded towel and a water bottle. She stepped into the center, looked around at the quiet, expectant faces, and said, "I'm not here to teach you how to fight." She paused. "I'm here to help you remember that your strength doesn't come from how hard you hit, but how deeply you stand for what's right." She smiled. "Let's begin." And in that quiet corner of a park, beneath the rising sun, a new kind of dojo was born. One where dignity stood taller than any rank, and respect wasn't earned through intimidation, but given through compassion. Because as Tiana once said, you don't need a black belt to teach martial arts. You just need a heart that refuses to judge. The morning sun bathed the field in gold, casting long shadows that danced with each movement of the students circling Tiana. No belts, no ranks, just people learning, healing, and reclaiming something many had thought was lost. But what happened that morning was more than a martial arts lesson. It was a lesson in human dignity. Tiana had reminded them, and all of us, that racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through assumptions. It hides in the way we exclude, dismiss, or underestimate others. It wears a smile but leaves a scar. Discrimination isn't always loud. Often it comes wrapped in politeness, in words like, "not quite a fit," "maybe not your place," or "that's not how we do things here." But whether it's spoken or silent, it stings just the same. Tiana never needed to raise her voice to be heard. She didn't have to prove herself with anger. She proved herself with presence, with grace, and with the quiet confidence of someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to protect. And that's a lesson we can all carry with us. We live in a world that still too often celebrates volume over value. The loudest voice in the room gets the attention, the flashiest titles win the applause, and those who move with humility are seen as weak. But the truth, real strength doesn't roar. It stands. It holds the line. It lifts others up instead of pushing them down. It refuses to meet hate with hate, and instead meets ignorance with integrity. For those of us who've lived long enough to see injustice in its many forms, Tiana's story hits close to home. Maybe you've been told you were too old, too different, not right for the role. Maybe someone made you feel invisible or small. But if this story reminds us of anything, it's this. You matter. You are not too late. You don't need to wear a title to walk in truth. Martial arts, in its purest form, isn't about dominance or aggression. It's about discipline, control, connection. It's about healing, not hurting. And the best teachers? They don't demand fear. They inspire respect. Tiana didn't win anyone over by force. She won them over by staying rooted in her principles, by letting her skill speak, but more importantly, by letting her character lead the way. That's something we can all take into our own lives. Whether you're walking into a new community, standing up for someone who's being overlooked, or simply trying to live with a little more grace, remember, the quietest presence can carry the loudest truth. So, if this story moved you, if it stirred something inside, made you think of a time you were doubted, dismissed, or told you weren't enough, I invite you to share your story in the comments, because your voice matters here. And if you believe, like we do, that stories like Tiana's deserve to be told, stories of quiet courage, of resilience, of respect earned, not demanded, then do us a kindness. Give this video a like. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us what strength really looks like. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth, honor, and healing. Because in a world that often forgets the value of stillness, may we never forget, it's not the belt that defines the warrior. It's the heart that refuses to judge. We'll see you next time. Until then, stand tall, speak gently, and walk in strength.